Hello, my friends, and welcome to FISHTORY. I'm Alexander Williamson, and today we are talking about the blueberry snail, an absolutely fascinating and beautiful new addition to the aquarium hobby that is so new it does not yet have a scientific description. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have gotten my hands on some of these the last few months, and I've been breeding them and observing them, filming them, and trying to learn as much as I can about them, which I have also been extremely fortunate and must thank Chris Lukoff so very much, the man who literally discovered these for the Western world, photographed them, brought them back, along with countless other shrimp and crayfish and fish species that he's photographed and discovered and brought back for the aquarium hobby. And he has been indispensable in creating this video. So today we're going to explore what is known scientifically about these incredible creatures, how to care for them, because we've got a pretty good handle on that, and just some interesting information about where they're from and some of the fascinating biology behind them. So let's get into it right now and talk about the blueberry snail.
Alright, now I must say I'm not generally a huge snail enthusiast. Beyond using them as part of an aquarium cleanup crew or decomposers in the food web of my planted aquariums and jungle ecology style tanks, I just don't keep snails for the sake of keeping snails generally. But I must say I think this is one that will change that. This is one of my all-time favorite snail species I've ever encountered, and they both fill the role in the aquarium of handling the ecology and decomposition part of things. They don't reproduce crazy fast. They're interesting in their behavior, and they're just beautiful. They really add to the beauty and complexity of the overall tank or aquascape that I put them in. And I say this only working with them for about the last 6 months. So there's still a lot more to figure out about these guys. Now, in today's episode, we're going to go over this stunningly beautiful freshwater snail, which has a pattern of electric yellow and orange speckles draped over a deep, dark blue, kind of a navy blue, and sometimes that blue is more of a chocolatey purple hue as well. And all of that wrapped in a helical shell that starts off with this deep auburn color and ages into a mahogany shade of rich, earthy brown. So this beautiful little snail is fascinating for a whole lot of reasons. But first and foremost, it's because it's one of the newest ones to the aquarium hobby, one of the newest ones in the world. This is out of the bird's head of Papua, as it's known, and it is still undescribed by science or any sort of taxonomy. So in today's video, we'll be trying to untangle the story of where this snail came from, who found it, tracking it down, and all that we currently know about this unnamed species. We're going to separate fact from fiction and untangle what the care of this species should be like, where exactly they came from, and where to go from here, including how to spawn them, or maybe even selectively breed and line breed them would be pretty cool to find new color morphs and things. Now, in the process of this, we will also explore a number of biological quirks that kind of make these snails one of a kind in our hobby. Blueberry snails, they give live birth, first off, which to me is like cuckoo bananas. What the heck? A snail that gives live birth, it's something giving birth to something else that already has a shell and looks just like it. I mean, that's bizarre. So, first of all, there's that. Next, there's that they fit into the planted tank just about perfectly, seeing as how they don't eat live plant material, and they occasionally burrow, which seems kind of random when they do it, but this aerates the substrate and mixes around the nutrients, and, you know, that's really helpful to the ecology of a planted tank. But did I mention they give live birth? That's so weird. Their eggs develop within a pouch inside the mother's shell, and then every 3 to 4 weeks, the mother releases one tiny baby snail that looks identical to the full-grown adults. And it's known that they reproduce sexually and that the babies can be born several months after a female pairs off with a male from just merely one encounter. However, what's still not known about them is if they share the ability of some other snails to reproduce asexually, or even as what we call a sequential hermaphrodite, which is when they essentially clone themselves by being a female with eggs, then turning into a male, fertilizing their own eggs, and then turning back to a female to have those babies, which is bonkers, but life will find a way. Hopefully further DNA analysis and studies will reveal this kind of information and details, and maybe they do something completely unknown and new beyond that. We really don't know, and that's why snails are super fascinating amongst a lot of other reasons. But every month or so, they crank out a new baby snail in warmer water with good nutrients and lots of biofilm to graze on. It seems like it can be up to every 2 weeks. And that means that even at the fastest they can reproduce, it's only the females, and they're only cranking out one every 2 to 4 weeks. So you really won't become overwhelmed with these snails, which I think is great. You can share them with friends. You can make more of them, but there's not going to be like 100 at a time taking over your tank ever. So we happen to be really lucky here at the channel in that I have direct contact with the man who first discovered these little gems and revealed them to the Western world. Other than a few tribal people in remote regions of Papua, no one knew about these until a man named Chris Lukoff, also known as the Shrimp King himself, came from Germany and decided to explore for rainbow fish and for crayfish, specifically Cherax crayfish. He went to Papua in 2006 and again in 2016, 2022. He's been there numerous times and taken incredible photography. So again, I want to thank him for letting me use some of these shots. You can probably tell which ones are his right off the bat without even seeing his name. He's one of the world's most experienced invertebrate and fish photographers, and he has traveled the world in search of new crayfish, shrimp, snails, and fish for basically the last 30 years. He's really responsible for some of the best photographs in the aquarium hobby as well. And then I'm going to relay what he knows and what he noticed and took detailed notes and chronicled in video and photos of where he found them, and also along with his experience, my experience, and a few others in the hobby that have been keeping them now. So they were found, as I said, by Chris Lukoff in 2016 when he was returning to northern Papua in order to catalog Cherax species of crayfish. Now, he found this beautiful crayfish there, and he went back to get samples and DNA analysis of them and bring them back to Germany. And on the trip in 2016, when he was bringing them back, he brought back the Cherax known as Cherax snowdeni, or Snowden, which was in honor of Edward Snowden. So that's where that lobster, that crayfish got its name. And these snails were found in the process of that expedition. So they hail from the Onsak River drainage in the Sawayat district of central Kepala Burung. So that's what we think of as the Bird's Head Peninsula in the northwestern part of Papua New Guinea, and it is the territorial holdings of the country of Indonesia. So it's a little more built up than the eastern side of the island. Now, initially, he labeled these as blueberry snails, and you can kind of see why. They've got like this purplish hue. From what they know so far, they think that this snail is in the group called Notopala, and that is the genus they're assuming it's in. Now, the waters that it was found in are just stunning. Crystal clear, beautiful waters, mineral-enriched waters flowing over limestone and ancient volcanic earth. And it's surrounded by aquatic and immersed plants, lots of beautiful fish, waterfalls, and, of course, a rainforest. So the temperature there is always going to be over 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The water temperature itself is going to be somewhere between 22 Celsius and 26 Celsius, or something like 70 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. The GH, total hardness, is 6 to 22 in that river and creeks where they were found. The KH, or carbonate hardness, is between 3 and 15 degrees, and the pH is anywhere from 7 to 8, so neutral to alkaline. And in the aquarium hobby, it's thought that somewhere between 7.5 and 8 is probably a good place to keep them. If you keep them more neutral, then they're more compatible with a lot of different shrimp and other fish and things. And I've been keeping mine with shrimp, but when I had them with Caridina at first, I actually ran into a problem with the acidity of the water eroding the shells a bit and new babies not coming out with their shells formed fully. So I added some hardness to the water, and it fixed the problem right away. Now, as you can see, I actually had these in with those shrimp and the rasboras. Now, when they're born, they're a beautiful deep purple, auburn color, and they have those electric spots and little antennae. They look just like the adults right away. But you want to make sure that the water quality is really good. You want to make sure that there's not too much mulm or detritus, too much debris. They really do like clean water, or water that isn't filled with organic debris that is already decomposing extremely. They like kind of freshly broken down foods, but they're not going to eat your fresh plants either. So they're a very niche specialist in their ecology, most likely. So seeing as they were found in the mountain streams of Papua New Guinea, they are most at home amongst Java ferns, Pogostemon stellatus, octopus, or Dawson's, Limnophilia australis or aromatica, or any number of plants from that Australasia region. As far as fish go, you could put them in with all sorts of different rasboras or sundadanios, little gouramis like the Valenti gourami, or the rainbow or peacock gudgeon as it's known, or any number of small rainbow fish, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. They don't seem to be on the menu. Also, any size aquarium should fit these guys just fine, as long as you have a fully cycled tank and some biofilm on the surfaces that are in your aquarium. Even a nano tank, a gallon and a half, could probably handle one of these snails, and they could do just fine in a large community tank with lots of fish and dozens of these snails. So they're really flexible in that way. Ideally, I think their habitat should be situated with a sandy substrate or a non-active aqua soil. It doesn't have any, ammonia or nitrogen or anything like that built into it. And the decor should include stones, dried botanicals like leaves, things like driftwood, and a nice seasoned coat of biofilm on the tank glass, if you happen to have it, would be great as well. Otherwise, you're probably going to want to supplement with things like in the shrimp hobby, they sell Bacter AE or kind of biofilm enhancing products that will build up the basic food web of what these microorganisms survive off of and how these biofilms form, and then the snails can eat that. Rapashi and some of the other brands also sell things designed more for plecos or catfish, and they seem to eat that as well pretty readily. Also, I've heard like boiled pumpkin and broiled zucchini and things like that are also appealing to these guys as well, if you want to go that way. Now, they do not seem to feed on algae itself so much as kind of filter feed it. And if you watch them through the glass, you can see their mouth moving, and it has these little denticles or little toothy tongue pieces that there's at least 4 or 5 of them, and they're licking the glass basically. And I couldn't help but notice myself that when they relieve themselves, it's these little tiny castings, like worm castings of a soil colored debris, unlike the big old curlicues and pellets that like ram's horn snails or Malaysian trumpet snails leave behind. And I think it's because they're specializing in digesting that higher protein, nutrition rich microorganisms and biofilms that are on those surfaces, and they're using that little tongue of theirs, their mouth parts, as a little rake or a comb to pull that off of there. And if they get some algae in the process, they seem to eat that as well, but that's not their main target as far as I can tell. They will eat spirulina, but that is a cyanobacteria after all, so I guess it leaves that somewhat in question, and I'm not about to feed them random cyanobacterias if I can help it. Now, unlike nearite snails, which directly target the hard diatom algae that looks like powder on the glass and have sharp denticles or mouthpieces, that usually they have these kind of 2 pieces that look like teeth that scrape at the glass in an alternating pattern, and they rip the algae off the glass. Well, these are not like nearites in that way, and their tongue, like I mentioned, is very different. And also, unlike the nearite snails, they appear to be fully freshwater snails. They don't seem to have a brackish part of their life cycle or need that whatsoever, which is nice if you're breeding snails in fresh water. Nearite snails lay those little white eggs on every surface, which kind of drives me nuts. And these do not do that whatsoever because, did I mention they give live birth? It appears that the females need to be about 3 or 4 months old to get fertilized and then to carry on and give birth from there out. The babies are about the size of a little BB, maybe 4 millimeters across when they're born, and they kind of just come walking right out of the side of the shell. There's a little pouch there that they come out of, with them forming a couple in line, evolving or growing in sequence. Now, the blueberry snail reproduces sexually as far as we know, and there are males and females. Now, to tell the males apart, you can spot them by checking out their right antenna. It's thicker and a bit shorter, and it generally curls up, whereas the left side antenna is more slender and sticks out a little farther. And if you see a female, you'll see both her antennae stick out evenly and are kind of long and slender. Well, the males have one that is stubby and curly, and that's how you're going to spot males and females. Now, fully grown, these snails seem to be around 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 centimeters, which is just about 1 inch in diameter at the equator of their helical shell. And blueberry snails are also in a class of snail with true sealing trapdoors, as I mentioned, which really protects that soft tissue, the foot and the mouth and gills, everything. They can retreat up into the shell and seal themselves watertight. Now, this helps them if there's a dry spell and they need to get out of a pond or puddle that they're in, or if they're going to move across a really humid, flooded forest floor or something. They can go amphibious and transit across that flooded forest floor over wet leaves and things, and then make it back into another pond or puddle if need be. So that is the guess for why they do that. That's why other snails in their family have that ability. Now, under a pH of 6.8, they do seem to suffer some damage, as I mentioned, and I had that one that lost its operculum cover, but also fascinatingly, this type of snail seems to be able to recover from that. Mine has grown a new operculum cover, a new shell there, and it has grown from the center out almost like tree rings, and now it is fully sealing again, even though for about a month there it wasn't able to seal itself up fully. But that ability to heal is really fascinating, and it did require that I move them into neutral to alkaline water with a hardness of about 150 parts per million, the KH and GH as mentioned earlier. The tarnished regions of the shell also seem to repair themselves from the inside out, where they had some holes at the very tip of the helical spiral as well. Now, they are currently listed as a species in the family Viviparidae, and they appear to be members of the genus Notopala, which is an Australasian genus of snails and is structurally really similar to these guys. They're full of live-bearing snails in this genus as well. But there's also the possibility, according to some of the biologists out there, I think that they could be in the genus Philopaludina, which is another mostly live-bearing snail, really closely related to the Notopala genus, and which is only in those islands of eastern Indonesia and Papua New Guinea and like Sulawesi that you find that genus. So that's possibly the argument why people think that it could still be categorized there. However, Notopala is what Chris Lukoff has said he believes the genus is, and because of this slight hesitation or mix-up, you'll see that it's listed as the Viviparus, which is the family name above genus. There's a family, obviously, in taxonomy, and so they'll go by that for now in the hobby. They'll go by Viviparus species blueberry. Now, over all this talk, we haven't really talked about the disposition of the snail, but they're very peaceful, which most snails are. Super manageable life cycle for the aquarium hobby, and I hope that by keeping them, we will help preserve this really beautiful and unique species that has been discovered. Hopefully they can cease harvesting them from the wild sometime soon, and, we can just keep them in the aquarium, because this region is under continuous pressure from human activities such as mining, palm oil plantation, cattle ranching, and also, sadly, the poaching of wildlife like plants and, of course, aquarium species and reptiles as well. Still a rather unusual snail in the hobby, but mark my words, they are going to be spreading across the hobby very quickly from 2024 forward, this year on, and according to Chris, they're going to be getting a name very soon and a scientific description, and it's supposed to be someone pretty well known in the aquarium hobby, a friend of his. So let's look forward to the upcoming announcement of who this little guy is going to be named after, and if you can find some for yourself, get a hold of them while you can, throw them in a seasoned tank, and enjoy this wonderful little blueberry snail.
Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I can't do this stuff without you. So thank you so very much to you viewers, you sharers, you likers, you subscribers. I would not be doing this full time if it weren't for you guys watching, and especially you members who go that extra mile to support the channel so that I can get into these subjects a little deeper than maybe your typical care guide video that's out there. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you check out this incredible new gastropod in our aquarium hobby, and I will see you guys on the next Fish Story.